Bears fans, Drafts fans, and all those in between, welcome back to Draft on Tap. We just wrapped up the 2026 NFL Draft after a couple of months of really hard work grinding the tape. My man D. Shimon over here has been going through it all. And we're going to go over the draft class tonight. We're going to talk about a couple of the other classes around our division, take questions from the chat, and close out this season of Draft on Tap. First and foremost, Danny, how you doing, man? How you feeling about our draft?
Ooh, I'm exhausted. Tired. But like I did the little day 3 wrap up video on Shimon Draft Scott. I said, I think the Bears had a good draft, right? Nothing over the top really, but I think it was solid overall. I mean, I think they filled a couple of needs with safety and then a long-term center. I think they got 2 starters, 2 for sure starters, possibly a third one with Malik Muhammad, the corner, in the 4th round, down the road. And then obviously with they got contributors like with a tight end that Sam Roush is gonna be the third tight end probably in a lot of 13 personnel packages. Xavier Thomas. I don't know why everyone's losing their mind over the Bears getting a wide receiver. How long have I been saying that Ben Johnson's going to draft a receiver? I said day 2 he's drafted. I almost guaranteed it, but everybody lost their mind when he took a receiver. Now you could say, all right, different receiver, fine, whatever. But Xavier Thomas provides something that Ben Johnson saw, and that's the speed element. And I keep saying he wants someone that's dynamic. He wants a dynamic element, someone that's going to take the top off the defense. I thought personally he might go for a little bit of a bigger body size, bigger body type, but 5'10", almost 5'11", and 195 pounds. Thomas gives him some versatility, but we'll get into each pick later on. But I'm just saying, so they got a contributor there, and then obviously Muhammad is a guy that I think will come in and again he'll go to that School of Hard Knocks under Al Harris, and I think he's a guy that's got talent, right? He's a true freshman starter at Texas, so this kid's a very, very talented kid. He's got some technique stuff he's got to work on, a little bit slighter frame, which they can in an offseason in the NFL program, get him a little bigger, work on that technique, coach him up, and then you move on. In terms of I think Elliott, the kid, the linebacker, I think that's a guy potentially. It's going to come in and be a special teams guy, but TJ Edwards is a guy that we don't know how much he has left. That could be a potential replacement there for Edwards.
Right.
And then the guy I like day 3 is the best is Jordan Vandenberg. And then for those who haven't seen this kid play, I know it's a little bit in terms of a prospect, he's not well known, but this kid is fun to watch on tape. Stats don't pop out, so if you're a stat scout, you watch stats. He had 11 tackles for loss and 3 sacks last year, which were career high. But you put his tape on, this kid's got that first step quickness, the ability to slash and get into the backfield. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is they got 2 first starters, possibly a third starter. Maybe down the road they have another starter there, and somewhere in there. But they have contributors. I think the 6th round pick's going to contribute this year. I think obviously tight end and the receiver are going to contribute this year as well, and maybe even the corner might contribute as well. So. So I think overall it was a solid draft, right? And I obviously the biggest thing was they still have a need on a defensive line. And I think that's a given. Everyone knows that. We'll go through in terms of how they may or may not address that moving on here in the offseason. But for me personally, I feel like it was a solid draft. What's your thought overall, AC?
Yeah, I was pretty happy with it overall. I love the Thieneman pick because I thought there was no shot he's going to be there within striking distance without us trading up for him. But he fell right in our lap, and when a prospect like that falls in your lap, you have to take him. And I've heard a lot of people talking about, well, why didn't we grab an edge there because EMW fell so far into the next round? But I think, Danny, I'm no scout, but I think it was Caleb Downs and Thieneman like neck and neck up here. Mm-hmm. And then I thought it was a pretty big drop off to EMW. It was.
Big time drop off. In my opinion, in my scouting, in terms of my grades overall, yeah. I mean, Thieneman would have been, if it wasn't a Caleb Downs, he would have been a top safety in this class. But he was right there with Caleb Downs in terms of interchangeable. I even heard some teams maybe had Thieneman a little bit. They prefer him a little bit more over Caleb Downs because of just the speed element, the overall athleticism. But for me, it was Caleb Downs, Thieneman, real neck and neck close, and then it was a big drop. I had a 2nd round grade on EMW, so he went, I think, right where I kind of had kind of forecasted and kind of scouted him for. So all the TV, GMs or mock drafters, whatever you want to call them, but they all had him going in the first round. I didn't see it. We even had Eric Edholm on, and I talked about it as well. Eric said, "Yeah, I don't see him going in the first round," and sure enough, he did not. So it was a big drop off. Definitely, in my opinion, you're right. We talked about it on Thursday night. It was the best player available. He dropped to them, and actually, I think we have to thank our division foes there, the Vikings, for going with the biggest boomer bust reach pick in the first round with Caleb Banks, for letting him drop. Once he got past the Vikings, I was like, all right, there's a chance, right? And then now you're worried about teams jumping up. And then when High Roseman and the Eagles jumped up ahead of obviously I didn't know it was for receiver. I thought maybe because they had lost one of their safeties to the Texans, and so they might have been looking for something there as well. But they went up getting Mekhi Lemon, and then that kind of just tumbled down. Thielemann tumbled right down to the Bears. So,
yeah, I'd heard that he could have gone high up as the Cowboys if someone else had taken Caleb Downs, but Caleb Downs fell to them, so they jumped up and grabbed him. And then, like you said, Minnesota grabs Caleb Banks, and then I was like, well, Carolina could use a safety as well, but I don't think they projected to have Monroe Freeling fall in their lap, so they went ahead and grabbed a left tackle, and then, like you said, dang, here come the Eagles trading up. What's it for? But if someone else had taken him, do you think Keldrick Falk would have been the pick, or I guess it's purely speculation?
That would have been my guess, but the only thing, and we talked about it the night that the draft happened, was there was some time there in between where it sounded like the Bears were getting some calls there for trade. So if Thieleman's not there, I think Ryan Poles even admitted it. Post that first night of the draft said that there were some offers there, but it just nothing really kind of that took them off of making the pick, right? So, but in your case, if Thielemann wasn't there, I think they may have either tried to trade back, probably move back depending on what they're getting offered, and then pick a Falk or maybe even a Keenan McDonald, I would think, right in the bottom half of that first round, if they stay in the first round at all. So I think if Thielemann wasn't there, they might have gone Falk, they might have gone McDonald, or they may have just traded down, possibly even out of the first round entirely. So, but
right after we picked, everyone behind us except for Seattle traded down. So
it was trade after trade. It was like, what the hell is going on? And Buffalo traded 3 times, got totally out of the first round.
Yeah, and Leo Factor saying that maybe there's a chance the NFL because teams weren't as high on him as people hyped up. But I think seeing everyone trade out behind us after we draft Thielemann, I think it kind of shows you that he was high on some other teams' boards, in my opinion, because once he's gone, they start moving. The same thing as Colston Loveland last year when we drafted him, the phone stopped ringing, So
Thielemann was high on a lot of teams' boards. Now, was he a top safety on a lot of teams' boards? I don't know, maybe not, but he was right up there. It was 1-2. The people I had spoken to, and no one had, and I mean, obviously, no one would tell me their board, but I'm saying like no one thought EMW was higher than Thielemann. So it's either Caleb Downs, Thielemann, or vice versa, however you want it. But there was the reason I think he fell down is because there was a run. On offensive linemen, a run on receivers, right? Those all kind of went ahead of the Bears, and then obviously that kind of dropped him down there to Chicago to go ahead and grab him at pick 25. But I don't think he was dropping because of lack of talent or some teams didn't have him as high on the board. I just think that teams ahead of the Bears just they saw the run of offensive tackles, especially tackles. There are only 3 first-round tackles, true left tackles in this first round. And you saw all of them kind of all go right there, and then all of a sudden mixed in with the guard from Penn State, and also then after the Bears, Keelan Rutledge went, the guard / center from Georgia Tech went as well. And the right tackle, Blake Miller went to Detroit there too. So it was a run on tackles and a run on receivers. I think that kind of just helped trickle down Thielemann to the Bears, and it worked to their advantage.
Well, I mean, speaking of offensive line, the second round we saw a run on defensive line that I think Akis would have been drafted by us if he fell to us, but the Patriots traded up and grabbed him right in front of us. So we go ahead and grab Logan Jones, who I loved. when we were talking centers on here, I fell in love with Logan Jones, and
Yep.
I think he was my favorite one in the draft. So the fact that we were able to get him, I was psyched about, and I shout out to you in this show for giving me the resources to have a little bit of knowledge on these prospects when they come up. I was like, even though whatever this consensus big board is that they've got, I know Logan Jones is a baller, and I know he's a fit and all of those things, and he fits perfectly. And then they trade down from 60, pick up some extra draft capital, and grab they grab Roush at that point, Sam Roush, and Packers fans were upset with it that we drafted him because they had their eyes on him, I guess, to try and get another tight end, which we're starting to see the offenses in the NFL. It's a copycat league, and Sean McVay last year continued to go into those 3 tight end sets, and you got Colson, Komet, and now Roush. You can go into those 3 tight end sets and really put the defense at a disadvantage where they have to either go into their base defense, which good luck covering Colson Leveland with someone in your base defense, or I don't know, they're gonna have issues matching up, which is really smart. And then Xavier Thomas, a lot of people had a problem with us grabbing him because the consensus board, again, had him in the 5th, 6th, later rounds. But I heard Field Yates on with Waddle and Sylvie today, and they said and Field Yates said a draft scout called him when he dropped his top 150 or whatever and said, "Where's Xavier Thomas at?" And he said, "Well, he's not in my top 150. And the guy told him, this is a guy who works somewhere in the NFL. He wouldn't give a name, obviously. He wouldn't give his source out, but he said, that guy's going in the 3rd round. So if it wasn't us, it would have been someone else in the 3rd round grabbing Xavier Thomas, even though a lot of people didn't like him. And then trying to think after that, we grabbed – I've got them all.
Let me touch on a couple of these picks real quick. So with Logan Jones, obviously, I think like you hit it. He was an ideal fit, right, for what the Bears do in terms of athletic. He's a guy that can get to that second level and that zone scheme, get to that second level linebacker, seal him and wall him off, and then allow that running back and create that lane for the running back to get out there. Also, obviously, Iowa players they come to the NFL. Iowa offensive linemen come to the NFL, or tailor made and he's that ability. He can play some power if you do some power gap stuff with them. You can do so obviously zone stuff with them as well. I just love the nastiness about him, man. Right, this guy went to Iowa as a defensive end and then switched over early on in his freshman season to offensive line to center, and started 50 games at center. So this is a 4-year starter, well decorated, consensus All-American, the Remington Award winner, which goes to the nation's top center in the nation. And you can see, he was a leader. Iowa won the Joe Wormington, the Joe Moore Award for top offensive line, and he was a leader of that offensive line, right? Team captain. So this is a plug and play player. Obviously with Garrett Bradbury, I love that clip right there when he just runs that guy into the opposing team sideline. So, he's a plug and play player. I mean, I think I'd have if they had not traded for Garrett Bradbury and they just picked up Logan Jones, I'd say Logan Jones is day one starter. Going to training camp, I'd be positive about that. But with Bradbury there, they may want to ease in Logan Jones, but both Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles mentioned after the draft that they're going to give him a chance to compete with Garrett Bradbury, and we'll see the best man win. For me, if Logan Jones comes out there and he beats Bradbury for the job, start him week 1. Don't mess around. Let him develop that continuity and just kind of grow together. So that's what I would do. And if you can hold on to Bradbury as a backup, he's just a one year guy anyway. If a veteran comes, another team wants to come and look for a veteran center, you can possibly trade him for some assets or whatever. But I'd give Logan Jones every opportunity to battle Garrett Bradbury for that starting center position and let the best man win. So, but yeah, that was a perfect fit for them. And as soon as I saw him on tape, I said, Ben Johnson's probably going to love this kid. And he loved him. So, and then in terms of Sam Roush and Xavier Thomas, right? So the biggest thing for me would be, Sam Roush is a solid prospect, right? He's a guy. And again, we were talking prior to the show, like the whole run on tight ends was kind of weird, right? It started in the 2nd round with the Jaguars taking a kid, Kirk Bircher from Texas A&M. He only had 19 receptions. Wasn't used much on offense at Texas A&M, but they went. That was a huge reach, in my opinion. And then we saw guys, being plucked here slowly but surely. I think that's where the Bears then. The other thing I think happened, and I'm not obviously sure, with that one of those second round picks, I think the Patriots jumped up ahead of the Bears and took Gabe Jackas, and that's the guy that I really was hoping the edge player. And then I think then they went ahead, they pivoted, they took Logan Jones, and then they went and trading down from 60 into the top of the third round. And I think then you saw this run on tight ends, and there's a lot of tight ends drafted this draft. I forgot what the final number was in terms of the amount of tight ends that was drafted, and a lot of these guys are, like the inline, blocking tight ends like a Sam Rush. And for me, Rush was the better of all of them, right? He's probably the best tight end, blocking tight end in the entire draft class. He's 6'6", 267 pounds with big 10-inch hands. His reach isn't great in terms of arm length, but this is a multi-sport athlete. This is a kid that played multiple sports growing up. He has played rugby as well as basketball, baseball, and soccer. And you see some of that rugby play in his blocking ability as well. So the biggest thing for me with him was some drops he had on tape, right? If you can clean those up, I think that you can develop this kid into a solid tight end. And then obviously, everybody's talking about Cole Kmet. Well, Cole Kmet's safe on this roster next season, maybe even next two seasons, right? But then after that, you got to start thinking down the line in the future in terms of, we talked about it a little bit on the draft night, right? We have contracts coming up here. You have Caleb eventually coming up. You have Darnell Wright coming up here pretty soon. Eventually down the road, Colson Loveland's, Roma Dunze, if he garners a second contract, so you got some young players you have to kind of think about, and in maybe a year, maybe 2 years, I'm not sure. Maybe then you can rid yourself of that Cole Kmet contract, and then Sam Rush can jump right into it as well. The other thing is you touched on the 3 tight end personnel, 13 personnel that the Rams really made popular this past season. The other thing that I think the Bears are looking for is they want to kind of move, in my opinion, they want to move Colson Loveland away from the line of scrimmage, right? So they're going to split him out right, whether it's a receiver or in line. Because a lot of times, in line, when you line him up, not that Colson can't do it. It's just that a lot of things happen there. Bodies get rolled up on, legs get rolled up on. You do not want to lose Colson Loveland. He is right now going into the season the number one receiver option for Caleb Williams. So, you might want to split them out wide there a little bit more, use them in terms of get them out in space, do a little mismatch in terms of matchups and all that stuff, get them one-on-one versus a linebacker or whatnot. And I think that's where you see Colson kind of shine there as well. So now you have 2 tight ends you can line in line, right? You're going to probably need one to kind of line up next to your left tackle, whether it's Braxton Jones or Jedrick Wills or the Canadian kid. I'm drawing
Theo Benedict.
So you're gonna need a tight end to kind of maybe help and chip there as well. So you can use them multiple different ways, and then just I could just see Ben Johnson's mind working right now in terms of how he can utilize these 3 tight end packages. So I know why you picked them. It's a solid pick. So I'm not. It's not a horrible pick or anything like that by no means. But my only thing with that pick was with the tight end pick was it a luxury pick, right? Was it something that you absolutely needed? Because in my opinion, you needed a defensive lineman. Obviously, Chris McClellan was the guy from Missouri. I really, really was high on. I was hoping they'd pluck him there in the 3rd round. He actually ended up going to the Packers, I think, like 6-7 picks later after the Roush pick. So that's the only qualm I have with the Roush pick. Not the player, not what he does, or not, is he needed or not. It's just, could you have maybe put in Chris McClellan? Now, maybe they weren't as high on McClellan as I was in terms of overall grade. That could be a possibility as well. So, but we'll keep an eye on that one, see how that plays out. Moving down in the future, and then Xavier Thomas again. We talked about it earlier at the beginning of the show. I told everyone they're going to draft a dynamic playmaker. Now, did I know it was going to be Xavier Thomas? No, I thought they were going to go with maybe a bigger body size type. But he's 5'10", almost 5'11", 109, between 109 and 195 pounds. He gives you any highlights here that I pulled here. You see him lined up all over the place, slot, outside, in the backfield there. And he gives you some of that DJ Moore stuff, right? You can line him up in the backfield like DJ Moore. You can line him up in the slot. You give him some bubble screens, slip screens. You can give him the ball in jet sweeps and all that stuff. And he brings the element that the Bears do not have, is that dynamic speed element. And I told you guys, Ben Johnson was going to get a receiver with dynamic speed ability. And this is the guy he picked. This is the guy he wanted. And not only that, he also gives you some of that punt return, kickoff return ability as well. Yeah. He led the SEC with 600 plus kickoff returns yards in his junior campaign there at LSU. So this is the guy that they're going to use. They have a plan for him, and they're going to use him in multiple different ways, right? Mm-hmm. So as on offense and also on special teams as well. So I think this is a guy that Ben Johnson kind of earmarked and said, I want him. So Ben Johnson, a lot of people now are kind of, giving Ryan Poles the business here. Guys, since last year, these draft picks, you have to give Ben Johnson, if he gets credit, you got to give him credit. If he gets the blame, you got to get the blame as well, because he's got a heavy hand in that draft room. I'm not saying he's making the final decisions, but I'm saying if he wants a player, he tells Ryan Poles and Jeff King, give me that player. And this player here, Sam Roush, the tight end as well, those to me are 100% Ben Johnson selections. He wanted them. He has a plan for them. He has a vision how he's going to utilize these players and their talents. And that's why. So for everybody who believes in Ben Johnson, you cannot doubt in terms of why he did this, right? So I've told you guys he's going to get dynamic receiver. This is the dynamic receiver he wanted. This is the one he got. And then the tight end was a bit of a surprise for all of us, but he's got a plan for him. He's going to utilize him. And I think, once the season starts, we'll see some of that vision kind of come into effect here with all these draft picks.
Yeah, and KB brought up an interesting fact on Barfly Tailgate Show. His height, weight, and speed is very similar to Jahmyr Gibbs. So if they decide to put him in the backfield, maybe he's got big plans for him. I'm not sure what Ben Johnson's plan is, but yeah, you said it perfectly. If it's in Ben we trust, it's in Ben we trust. I love this play here. He's just absolutely surrounded by guys, and he just breaks out of there.
Contact balance, that to be able to run through arm tackles and all that stuff. And he's got a powerful lower half, right? So like I said, ran a 4.28 40. He has a 36-inch vertical. Did 16 reps on the bench. At the combine he came in at 190, but I think he's up to 195 now. But again, almost 5'11". So he's a guy that'll give you big play dynamic ability, right? So whether it's in the slot, whether it's in the backfield, whether it's some of the way the motions they use there at LSU and got him ball in the open field, just get him the ball in his hands and let him do his thing. And I think that's what Ben Johnson envisioned. And you add that threat or that speed element on, whether from the slot or from the backfield. Defenses have to pay attention to that, right? And then that also now gives you other easy opportunities because there's attention being paid to this one guy who can run 4.28 here. There's other opportunities being open in the middle of the field or on the outside or whatnot. So that's the one thing I know for sure. You can question why go tight end in the third round. You can question why go Xavier Thomas in the third round. But Ben Johnson has a plan for these guys, right? And then we're going to see it play out next year on the football field.
Yeah. Yeah. And I heard someone else say on ESPN 1000 today that while Ben was watching the tape of Zion Thomas, his legs started shaking and he started getting all jittery. Like he just started, I'm sure, drawing up plays in his head. And then again, that was the scout.
That was the area scout that came out and talked to the media after the pick was made. That he saw when Ben starts rocking back and forth in his chair, starts sketching, and then Brian Pohl said they was sketching some plays on a piece of paper in terms of how he's going to utilize Zion Thomas moving forward. So yeah, I'm not telling you, this guy's got ideas on how he's going to utilize them. And the one lazy comparison that I keep hearing, and it's driving me crazy. It's the whole Velus Jones thing.
Yeah.
First of all, Velus Jones was brought in here as a guy that was a returner, tried to be a receiver, was a running back. This kid is a receiver. He's a receiver who's been used in the backfield. He's not a running back. He's a receiver that's got ability to carry the ball as a runner, but he's a returner. But he's more accomplished than Velus Jones. And Velus Jones was not someone that I would put on the same level as Xavier Thomas here. So don't fall for those lazy comparisons because they're third round picks. But and that was done by a different coaching staff, a staff that had no idea what the hell they're doing in terms of offense. Hell, maybe not even idea what they're doing on defense either. But this is a staff that knows what they're doing. I'm telling you, Antonio L has got a plan for Xavier Jones when he gets in the building. Obviously, Ben Johnson's got a plan for him, and I'm sure Press Taylor's got some plays already designed where they can get that ball into Xavier Thomas's hands in the open field and let him do his thing. So exciting prospect, exciting ability. Yeah, there is still a need for defense tackle. Trust me, I'm the first guy that pounds the table for offense and defensive linemen. And, that the fact that there's still an opening or a hole, in my opinion, at the defensive tackle position, I'm not so much concerned. You and I have talked about this. I'm not so much concerned about edge or defensive end. I know others disagree. I think that'll be okay. It's the defense tackle because you got to stop that run in order to make these teams fall into, second and long and third and long. And then you can provide and dial up pressure on them. So That's the thing. We'll see how the season goes on here. The key thing, but today's date, today's the 27th. After today, anybody signed, any veteran free agent signed, doesn't count against your comp pick, formula. So, maybe that's why some of these veterans haven't been signed yet. Is because of that comp pick formula. So, not sure how the Bears are, going to get any comp picks or not. But that's something to keep in mind is veterans signed after today, they don't count against the comp, pick formula. So, that's not going to ruin them. So we'll see. Maybe I anticipate one, maybe two veteran defensive linemen being signed. Before we get to training camp. Who are those going to be? Are they going to be big names? Are they going to be just more role players? We'll see. And also, there's always trades that come up. Teams that kind of after the drafts kind of go through their roster and see, hey, where do we get some players here? Where do we have some extras here? And
right.
We'll never know what happens in terms of moving on forward. But it's now into the third phase in terms of first phase of actually getting talent is free agency. Second phase is the draft. The third phase is post-draft free agency. We'll see what the Bears do there.
Yeah, you've always got veterans that just don't want to go through the whole rigmarole of training camp and out there in the hot sun and all that. And
well, it's OTAs mainly, but they got to go through training camp. It's the OTAs that they don't want to go through.
Yeah, that's what I meant. But yeah, the comparison to Xavier Thomas and VJJ, other than them being Bears draft picks from the third round, that's really where the comparison stops for me. I think I always thought it was because of my bias, but I was never a fan of Bayless because he went to Tennessee, and I've made my thoughts known about the Tennessee offense out there anyway. Whereas LSU receivers, there's a history of those guys hitting. Yeah, even if they don't hit right away, like Keshan Booty. Didn't look like he was going to hit right away. Then last year he started to take off. I just to compare the two, I just feel like it's kind of lazy. And like you said, maybe if Ben Johnson was here when VJJ came, maybe he would have had a way to use him. But that's neither here nor there. We'll move on. The next round they picked Malik Muhammad, the corner out of Texas, who fell right in their lap. And I mean, for everyone who says we reached on Xavier, you have to see that Malik Muhammad fell in your lap and you grab him 2 rounds after what he was proposed. I grabbed some highlights of him here. I took the sound out, but when I was listening to the sound, you could hear the crowd while he's making these plays.
Yeah, with Muhammad, he's a guy that came to Texas as a true freshman and was a starter from day one, right? So he's a talented kid. He was a high school All-American, also played basketball and ran track, a 2-year starter with the Longhorns there. And, for me, at the Combine was where – I'm sorry, at the Combine, at the Senior Bowl is where I really saw him. And he struggled a little bit at the Senior Bowl, had up and down week. But the one thing I saw him and I loved in him is his competitive toughness. This is a guy that went up there and took on challenges, one-on-one in those drills. And, yeah, he got beat sometimes, but also, he came back and won a couple of those battles. So he's a guy for me, like when I was looking at him and watching him on Texas, there's a lot of off-man coverage stuff. Like right here, he started off in off-man coverage and he dropped back. And so that tells me he's more like a zone, like a cover 2 kind of corner. Mm-hmm. However, at the Senior Bowl, I saw him, get up and press and get into the face of the receivers. And, he's got, 32 plus, inch arm length. He's a little slender frame, so 182. So you're going to have to get him a little bit bulkier, get him a little bit bigger there. But I think I like him better in press coverage. I like him, disrupting the timing and the route of the receiver at the line of scrimmage. And again, DA's always talked about, he wants corners that are aggressive and be able to come down and kind of reroute receivers and also, throw off the timing of the offense. I think that's where he kind of would succeed there again with that length and with that height, 6 foot tall. So for me, again, that size and length, I love that. I love the temperament, the competitive toughness that he has there. For me, he's, he can drop back and be an off-man corner, but also I think I like him too as a press man, physical corner as well. So, technique-wise, he's going to have to get, coached up. And again, Al Harris is probably the best corner, coach, secondary coach in the NFL. And I think you give him a kid like this talented. Again, obviously Texas is a big time program. You start as a freshman, you've got some big time talent, right? So
absolutely,
I'm saying you have Al Harris coach his kid up, and then this is the other guy, right? I said they drafted 2 starters for sure. He could be a 3rd starter, right? And we've talked about Tyreek Stevenson, this could be a hit or miss in terms of his season with the Bears. And obviously, Terrell Smith, who I'm a big fan of, is always, unfortunately, always injured. So Muhammad has a chance to come in here. And then obviously, Ja Frazier is a rookie from last year we have not seen. So he's got a chance to come in here and, get under the tutelage of Al Harris and develop and become a future NFL starter. So that's where I said, they got 2 starters for sure, potentially 3 starters, and a bunch of other contributors in terms of other words on the defense as well. So good. I had him as a day 3 pick. So he went in the same range that I had him at. I had him a 4th round range. That was my grade on him. So, and primarily the only questions of why I have him in a day 3 was some of the turnovers. Ball production wasn't there. Now he did have 2 interceptions this past year. Prior to that, I only had 1 interception. And for me, he looked slower than what he timed. He timed at 4.42. But on tape, I thought he was more in a 4.5 range. So we'll see how that goes. But terrific athlete. Had a 39-inch vertical, 10-foot, 10-inch broad jump. I think this is a guy that you give to Al Harris, let him coach him up, get him a little stronger, right? In that offseason program, add about 5 pounds to him, maybe even 7 or 10. And now you let him go out there and be a press corner and let him disrupt receivers on the edge. So I think this is a good value pick there in the 4th round for sure.
Yeah, I was definitely excited about grabbing him there. And then the next guy, linebacker out of Arizona State, Keshan Elliott, more of a downhill linebacker making plays in the backfield. They say he's not that great in coverage, which is something he'll have to learn. Maybe he's a special teams guy out the gate, but I mean, I love what I'm seeing on tape out of this kid. He's super aggressive and just attacks. He's an attacking linebacker, which is what I love to see.
Yeah, good frame. He's rocked up in terms of his physique is 6'2", 231. You can see that he's got the muscles throughout his frame. So he's a hitter. He's a striker. He'll come downhill and fill with some authority in terms of the run defense. He's another one that was a great athlete in high school, 3-sport athlete, playing football, basketball, and track. He actually won the Missouri State Championship in the 4x200 relay, so he's got some good speed there. And that came up in terms of his pro day. Ran a 4.58 40 with a 1.66 10-yard split. Yeah. I had a 38-inch vertical, put up 21 reps on the bench with a 10-foot 5-inch broad jump. So this, for me, in my opinion, and we kind of touched on it earlier, AC, this is my TJ Edwards replacement, right? Edwards is probably got 1 more year left in him, coming off that injury that he suffered in the playoff. We'll see how it goes this year. But, yeah, I mean, he's a guy, very instinctive linebacker, again, plays with some physicality at the line of scrimmage. And we saw some of that with DeMarco Jackson in terms of when he got brought in last year, in terms of, some speed, some physicality, his ability as a blitzer. If you look at last year, he had 98 tackles last year for ASU with 14 tackles for loss. So that tells you that he's getting into the backfield and 7 sacks, right? And all those sacks were blitzes. So again, coming downhill, utilizing that short area burst, that 1.66 10-yard split. This is where he gets in and makes some plays. So similar to the mold for me of DeMarco Jackson, maybe a little bit more of a bigger, more fuller in terms of frame-wise linebacker, but yeah, in terms of, will he struggle in coverage? We'll see. Again, he's a pretty good athlete overall. So maybe it's just something that he's going to have to, kind of learn and pick up here as the years go on. But yeah, next year, I think he's going to be a special teams guy. And I think eventually, for me at least, he's a TJ Edwards probably replacement in the future.
Yeah, he wore the green dot at Arizona State too, so he's a leader. Was able to call the defense and all that kind of stuff. He was another guy that we weren't expecting to be there.
Yeah, he started off at New Mexico State for 2 years and then transferred to ASU for the last 2 years. And like I said, wore a green dot, had that leadership, ability there on defense. So yeah, definitely a guy. Last year was phenomenal in terms of what he produced on the football field. So and again, you couple that with that frame, that body, and that athletic ability. That's a very intriguing, again, 5th round pick, right? Where you get this kid at. Yeah,
and then our final pick in the 6th round, they took both their 7th round picks, traded up into the 6th to get this kid Jordan Vandenberg out of Georgia Tech. The kid just athletic freak, strong as an ox, and I mean, I don't. How does this kid fall to the 6th round? With I didn't know much about him, but once I started seeing what he was doing as far as lift. His father was a weightlifter, so he's going to be strong. And then fast as I mean, it's crazy. Tell me about him.
Yeah, he was the guy I wanted, and I was kind of nervous after they made the Elliott pick, the linebacker. I was like, man, is this guy going to last to the 7th round? Because he had no 6th-round picks, and I caught on to him late, and when I started watching his tape, I'm like, damn, this kid is good, in terms of athletic ability. And then he went on to his pro day, and he just lit it up. He ran a 4.94 40, 1.61 10-yard split, 36-inch vertical, a 9-foot 11-inch broad jump, 35 reps on the bench. So this kid is a physical freak. He's 6'3", 310 pounds with 32 and 1/8-inch arm length. He walked on at Iowa Western Community College, started his collegiate career, then transferred to Penn State. He was there from 2021 to 2023, made 0 starts, and was just basically a backup guy. And that's, I saw an interview with him. That's where he kind of started getting into the whole weightlifting program and really got stronger. And then transferred to Georgia Tech in 2024, and then went on to become a 2-year starter there, making 20 starts there for the Yellow Jackets. And this past season, 2025, he led the team with 11 tackles for loss and was a first-team All-ACC. Now, if you're a stat scout, you just look at stats. Nothing jumps out at you. You only had 3 sacks, but again, those 11 tackles for loss, those mean something. And you put on his tape, and you see that first step quickness. You see his ability to bull the offensive lineman, get into the gaps, whether it's penetrating and winning the outside shoulder of the guard, or just walking them right straight back into the running back or into the quarterback. So I love this kid. And I was, when they traded up from the 7th round to 6th round, I was hoping that this was the guy they're targeting. And sure enough, that's the guy that they targeted. And I was ecstatic about it. So again, I'm not saying he's going to be an all-pro defensive tackle for the Bears, but I think he's a guy that can come in next year and he can be part of a rotation. I think he can be a guy that can, especially with DA, you run a lot of those stunts and twists, and that with that athletic ability and his first step quickness and the ability with that short area burst, I think this guy can make some havoc there along defensive front. So really excited about this kid. I think this is going to be someone that Bears fans are going to get to know and are going to start to get to love as the season goes on. And I do expect him to contribute next year as part of that rotation. So, Jordan Vandenberg is a kid that I was hoping they would target. They actually did, moved up and traded and got him. And I think that this is going to be a really, really good pick 2-3 years down the road. We'll be like, damn, they got this guy in the 6th round. So, again, I'm not going to try and tell you guys he's going to be an all-pro, but I'm telling you this guy's going to be a fan favorite. He's going to make some plays, and he's going to be a guy that's going to be part of that rotation early on in his career.
I mean, maybe I'm getting out over my skis on this kid, but man, when I see what he's putting on tape and the athleticism and the testing numbers and all this stuff, he just looks like an absolute steal for me. Dylan Holmes is saying here, what a lot of us Bears fans went into the draft saying we need edge rusher. The edge rushers didn't fall to us. I'm wondering if this Vandenberg kid pushes Shamar Turner to the outside. Maybe we get our edge rusher like that. And also, I feel like everyone's forgetting about Austin Booker. He's going into his 3rd year. He's an ascending talent. Absolutely, we could have used edge rusher depth. Absolutely. But at the point in the draft, other than deny Dennis Sutton, which I'm assuming they must not have liked a whole lot because they let him continue to fall, I just didn't see where we were supposed to grab an edge rusher that fits Dennis Allen's scheme as far as size and all of those things. So this kid right here, if he can play some defensive tackle for us, Dennis likes all these guys to be able to move around too. So maybe that's part of it. What are your thoughts though?
I agree, and so a 2-part there. So obviously, with in terms of Shamar Turner, I do believe they're going to kick him out to edge. I think that's or defensive end, I should say. That's where they had him before he got injured, and I think that's where they're going to keep him there for now. And Jordan Vandenberg could be part of the reason why they keep him out there. Obviously, they signed Gallimore as well, and also Katavius Street and the kid Lynch as well. So they got some depth back there. So they can keep Turner out there. The only question about Turner is he turns ACL midseason. When's he going to be back, right? And same thing with Dio Dengbo. So that's a big thing there. In terms of edge, and I get it. I know why people are dying for an edge or asking for an edge, but I'm with you. And I've been on this train from the beginning. And I said, edge is a need, but it's not a dire need. And then because of Austin Booker and guys, towards the end of last season, I've said this multiple times on multiple different shows. Austin Booker was the best pass rusher in the last 3 or 4 weeks for the Bears, opposite of Montez Sweat, right? So I think that's a guy. He's been. I've seen some clips of him in terms of Instagram, in terms of some of the workouts he's done. He's putting on some weight. He's getting some good muscle in.
Getting stronger.
And yeah, and he's a guy that I think that the Bears have high hopes on, and that Dennis Sutton was a guy I was hoping to get as well. But then I'm thinking like, so all right, would he come in? Would Dennis Sutton come in here and be able to beat Austin Booker out? And if the answer is no, or win that starting job, then you go get yourself another player, another position. That's what they did when they got Malik Muhammad at cornerback. So that's the thing for me is they got the guy there. And the other thing is for me is we saw towards tail end, especially in the playoffs, the DA and I think this was something Ben Johnson said after the draft. He said we're going to coach them better in terms of generating pass rush, right? And everybody thought, oh, they're going to go out and they're going to make these guys better pass rushers by coaching them. I think the way I took it was they're going to, all right, now they know what they got. Now they know what Turner can do if healthy. Now they know what Vandenberg could do if healthy. Now they know what these guys can do when healthy. So now you're going to go, all right, now I got myself Kyler Gordon, hopefully healthy. I got myself 2 safeties that I can mix and match back there. Both are, fast and both are aggressive in terms of what they can do. Now you're going to see, and they got a fast linebacker in Devin Bush. Now you're going to see, I think you're going to see DA scheme up more pressure, and meaning utilizing every guy on the field, whether it's corner blitzes, whether it's safety blitzes, whether it's linebacker blitzes, whether it's stunts up front. I think that's what I think Ben Johnson was referring to when he says we have to coach up pressure better. I think instead of taking what these guys, can and can't do and say, all right, player A does this well, cool. We're going to put him in this package, and now we're going to do this, run this kind of, in this kind of base, and we're going to run this kind of pressure off it. So I think that's what they mean. So I think they're going to generate pressure. And again, Austin Booker is developing, and I think he can eventually be that 7, 8, 10 sack guy, consistently. So edge is not the big issue for me or the worry for me. It's D tackle, because if you can't stop the run, I don't give a crap who you have coming off the edge. They'll just run the ball right down your throat, right? So that's where I think they need to kind of hone in. And I understand they signed some backup, some depth kind of guys, but again, those are what they are. They're depth backup guys. I want some guys that can come in here, some young guys that can stop the run. Now, Keenan McDonald was a guy. A lot had from Ohio State. A lot had said this guy was going to be just a 2-down. See, he was a 2-down player at Ohio State. He was strong currently as a run stuffer, but I thought he had some ability in terms of being able to be a pass rusher and develop into a pass rusher. So that's why I loved him a lot. Right. Unfortunately, that's someone they didn't go and draft. But
Houston moved up to grab him, and we just, as far as trading up, like Yakis, they traded up in front of us to grab him. I just don't think I
assume, right? We don't
capital to move up.
We don't know that they wanted Yakis. I assume they wanted Yakis, just because typically New England. Why would New England jump up ahead of the Bears and another team to get Yakis? Because they thought the possibility that they've heard stuff that the Bears were interested, or our team might be taking them there. So that's why they jumped up. So you just assume that, but we don't know 100% for that, right? But again, this is where you got to go into the third phase of free agency, and now you find your defense tackles. Who that's going to be, whether it's via trade, whether it's via mid training camp acquisition in terms of a cut, guy someone gets cut, so on and so forth. We'll see, because right now free agent list in terms of the defensive line, especially D tackle, it doesn't look too good, doesn't look too appealing, right? So the only veteran defensive lineman out there that I would be interested in would be Cam Jordan. And again, he's an edge guy, right? He's an edge guy. So, would bringing in a Cam Jordan kick Dio inside to defensive tackle, where I think he's probably best suited, that could be a possibility there as well. So we'll see what they do there. And like you said, DA likes to mix and match. Likes to brings these guys in waves. It's kind of like a hockey line, like a shift change, right? He brings one wave in, and then brings another wave in as well. So I think edges are okay. If they bring in a guy like Cam Jordan, help kind of fortify that even more. Terrific, great. But the interior is where I'm worried about. And until we see how they go to training camp and actually break camp and open the season with, I want to see what they do from now until opening week at defensive tackle, because that's my biggest concern right now is that defensive tackle position.
Well, I had a question here from the chat asking, do you think Falk, Howell, or Parker would have been better at 25? I know Howell wasn't a fit. That's kind of how I answered it. We were big fans of Falk. But I looked up today, our defensive line coach came from Auburn, had Falk as a freshman. So if anyone knows him, it's him. I mean, he recruited the kid and all that stuff. And then Parker, we liked a lot too. I mean, I picked him in our mock draft, but I just think the enemy was too good for them to pass up once he fell to them at 25.
Exactly. I think if Thieneman wasn't there and the trade back opportunities weren't enticing, I think they would have stuck and taken Falk or McDonald. That's my opinion. And I think that connection they have there with Falk. I think that's why you heard a lot of like Daniel Jeremiah, like he does a lot of his mock draft in terms of he asks around and kind of gets a feel for what teams are doing. And I think his final mock he had Falk going to the Bears. So right. I think if Thieneman wasn't there, and assuming that none of the trade back options were good, I think they would have taken Falk, stayed and taken Falk there. So,
well, I mean, we had undrafted free agent lists come in. I'll run down through them. We got tape on one of the guys while we're on defensive line. Should I throw the tape up first or go over the list first?
Which one do you have there?
It's Jaden Love, the Wake Forest defensive tackle. This was a kid who they paid top dollar for as far as UDFAs. I'll throw the tape on first, and then we'll go over the whole list.
So yeah, Jaden Loving is a D tackle from Wake Forest. This is a guy that started playing collegiately at Bethune-Cookman in 2021 and 2022. Transferred to Western Kentucky in 2023. Had only one start there, and then last year transferred to Wake Forest where he had only 3 starts. So this guy's been a rotational player, hasn't been a full-time starter in college. And in terms of again, they brought him in, and I believe they gave him one of the higher signing bonuses for undrafted free agent. You put on his tape, and the first thing that jumps out at you is this guy's an active defender. He's a guy that when you run those stunts up front and when you do something and you slant and you slash, he can get up into that gap and get up into the backfield and cause some disruption there. So at a pro day at Wake Forest, first of all, his dimensions, he's pretty small. He's 6'1", 309. With 30 1/4 inch arm length, right? So he doesn't fit the profile, but you see some of that quick twitch ability there. He's got a thick frame, a good power in terms of throughout his body. Put up 33 reps on the bench, 35-inch vertical. Ran a 4.82 40 at the pro day with a 1.64 10-yard split. And again, that 10-yard split is what's the thing that I look at most in terms of defensive lineman and my offensive lineman. So he has that ability there. Talked about some of that thickness in terms of his lower body, powerful there, can slant and flow laterally to fill run gaps, push his way into the backfield, quick to locate and find the ball post snap, which is something I really do like about him. They had him playing some 2-gap there at Wake Forest, and you could see him to kind of wait there and then just jump off, dislodge from the offensive lineman and then make that play. So he has those heavy hands, can toss those blockers left and right, can get underneath the pad levels. Being a shorter player, if you go up against some of those big offensive linemen, playing with leverage, getting underneath the pad level of the offensive lineman and kind of rocking them back, getting them off balance, allows you to win there at the point of attack as well. So you saw some of that on this tape here as well. So, there are things you like, things you can kind of like say, all right, this guy brings something to the table here, so I can see what they're talking about here. So, obviously some of the negatives about him: undersized, short arms, can get engulfed when he doesn't get that, he doesn't win that angle upfield. Was never a full-time starter. I was just 4 starts collegiately throughout his career. And, production wasn't the greatest. Only had 2.5 sacks last year. He's got 4.5 sacks for his entire career. The 8.5 tackles for loss last year was a career high. So that's something that you kind of look at and kind of looking at his highlights here. You see where he can get up into the offensive lineman, win leverage, use those heavy hands, some of that quickness he's got there as well, that short area speed, and get into the backfield and cause disruption. So, he's a guy that it's intriguing in terms of coming in here. Obviously, I think he's got a chance to possibly make the practice squad. But thinking this guy's going to be a week 1 on the roster kind of guy, a little bit far fetched for me personally. But definitely a guy that intrigues me. Obviously, you see the motor. He's always plays hard, right? So I think he's a guy that if he comes in here and does what he's doing here on tape, I think he has a really good chance actually to make the practice squad.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just an old man yelling at clouds, but I don't think I'll ever get used to seeing a single digit on the defensive line. It just looks weird to me. But I mean, they paid the kid top of the line for UDFAs, so they must see something in him, or maybe he was getting offers from some other teams and he kind of let his agent do some negotiating for him. I like what I see out of him. We needed defensive line help, and we got it here at the end of the draft, and I think that we got good value for guys that we did grab. I really like the Vandenberg kid, but And I noticed I spelled his name wrong. It's Jaden Loving, not Jaden
Yeah.
Love. But yeah, I like what I saw there, man. Even though he was undersized, he was holding his own against those big guards and centers in the phone booth there.
Yeah. And there's always stories like that. There's always stories like a Jaden Loving, right, coming out of nowhere with minimal starting experience at college, and then just you get into the right program, you get into with the right coaches, and then the right scheme, and next thing he's a guy that's a contributor on an NFL roster. So that's where I think you see with some of these UDFAs, you want to see something. You want to see whether it's size, whether it's athletic ability, whether it's a toughness, a meanness, or whatnot, a competitive toughness, and you just want to bring him in and have him compete. And I think that's what you're going to get here with Loving. He's going to get a guy that's going to come in here undersized. Obviously, the experience isn't what you're used to in terms of usually with these draft picks, but he's going to be given every opportunity to compete. And like I said, if possibly make the practice squad and just open up some eyes here. So that twitchiness, that ability to get off and get into the gaps and cause some disruption is what really caught my eye when I was watching his tape. So I see why the Bears were interested in getting him in here and seeing what he can do.
Yeah, and I grabbed a list of all the UDFAs that we signed. I know you said you're having trouble seeing it, but I can read them off.
That first one I can see, and that's the kid from Utah. That's the one that really, really I like a lot. Intrigues me. So that's Jaron Kump from Utah. I'll just get into him here real quick. 6'5", 313. He's a little bit older. He's at 26 years old. He's a 6-year senior. He served a 2-year mission, so that's why he's up there in age. But he ran a 5.2 740 with a 1.87 10-yard split. 34-inch arms, 11-inch hand size. He's a versatile offensive lineman. This guy who was a 2-year starter at center for the last 2 seasons at Utah, but he's made over 40 starts in his career, and he started 7 games at right tackle. He started 29 games at center, 3 at left tackle, 1 at right guard, and 1 at left guard. So he's basically started every single position along the offensive line. So he gives you some that offensive that position versatility. This guy that again, not the multi-sport athlete. A lot of these guys that the Bears are bringing in are very good athletes in high school. Played football, basketball, and also ran track as well. It's a team captain, right? Terrific size and length. Again, the versatility is something that really catches your eye in terms of being able to play 5 positions. Solid in pass pro. Plays long, locks up, squares his shoulders up, and dances with the defensive tackle. Does a nice job of forming a wall and getting in front of the quarterback, and kind of keeping that pocket clean there, forming it with the guards as well. Always looks for work in the pass pro. Will bury his shoulders in a defensive lineman's rib cage. So I love some of that nastiness he shows there on tape. Can twist and bury defense tackles into the ground with some of those strong hands, and again some of that nastiness. Gets into the defender, or runs his feet in terms of on run blocks. He creates some movement there, and again, uses that big frame, leans on them, and just runs those feet and gets that guy off his spot there. So you like that there in terms of the run blocker. Can get out and pull on the edge, so you can see some of that power stuff there as well. Again, seal off the interior in terms of seal off and get in front as a lead blocker for running backs. So there's some positive stuff, things you see on tape. Obviously the size and the versatility is great there. Like I even looked at some of his dimensions at 34-inch arms at 6'5", 313. This guy could even be, he could potentially even be a tackle if you need in a pinch, right? But I do like him inside. I do like him at center or guard. Okay. There are some things in terms of some of the negatives. Obviously, he was undrafted free agent. I think some of that, the quicker, twitchier defensive tackles can get to his inside shoulder and kind of beat him upfield. Mm-hmm. He kind of lumbers to a second level, right? He's not a smooth guy. Like you put on Logan Jones, you see him just kind of fly up to a second level linebacker. With this kid, he kind of lumbers up to a second level, and his 1.87 10-yard split kind of identifies that as an issue for him as well. Obviously he's 6'5", he plays with a lot of the elevated pad level, meaning that he loses leverage. So when that happens, he can get opens up his chest, allows the defensive lineman into his chest, allows him to kind of get walked back or pushed around a little bit. So there are some coaching points that you can work on with him. Right. I'm telling you, man, that position versatility, the size, the length, I think, athletically he's not ideal, but he's not horrible either. So I think this is a guy, he can get a chance to come make that team, make the roster. Maybe again, the big thing is the experience in terms of starting at multiple spots along the offensive line. Remember, he started a game, at least one game, at every single position on the offensive line. So, Ryan Bates has gone. He's a guy that gave you some of that versatility. He's no longer on this roster. A kid maybe like a Jaron Kump could be someone that could come in and be that that extra offensive lineman that on game day, if he's active, could back up 2, 3, maybe even 5 positions on the offensive line. That is huge, and that's something that every team would like to have, that in terms of that versatility. So this is a guy that really caught my eye. I think this is a guy that has a chance of making this roster.
This next guy, you kind of rained on my parade with him. Caden Barnett, the guard out of Wyoming. I just love his look, man. I didn't watch the tape on him or anything. I know you actually broke down the tape. He just looks like a badass on our offensive line.
He'd be all pro, man. I'm telling you right now. He looks like one of the Road Warriors from
right.
Terms, right? So
hey, if NFL don't work out, man, WWE's always higher.
There you go. But this guy also he's intriguing, right? He's he's 23 years old. He's 6'4", 316 is his weight. With 33 3/8 inch arm length, 9.5 inch hand size. So this is a guy that's got some of the in terms of his test numbers, right? He tested very well. 5.03 and a 40, 1.73 10-yard split. Has 22 reps on the bench. 31 inch vertical. A 3-year starter for Wyoming. He's got 23 starts at right tackle, 12 at right guard. A second team All Mountain West Conference selection this past year. So, again, another one's got solid size and length. Thick frame. Experienced starter. Multiple starts at different positions on the offensive line. Good anchor versus power in terms of. And for me, he's a better pass blocker right now than he is a run blocker. Good anchor versus power. Solid pass pro. Sets, extends. Locks up. Has strong hands. And a good balance, stance as well in pass pro. So the size and athletic ability combination make him an intriguing developmental backup. This is a guy that I think can come in here and, again, we talked about it with Loving in terms of, being someone that can kind of catch your coach's eyes, do some positive things here, and then also, maybe make the practice squad. And that's where I see him developing there. So I don't see him as a tackle prospect. I see him more of an inside guy, whether it's guard or he's played at right guard. So maybe guard or center. But, he's an intriguing kid. He's an intriguing kid. A guy's got some size. He's got some athletic ability. Doesn't have the lateral foot agility and quickness I think that they want in terms of getting to that second level linebacker and all that stuff. So he's not really that athletic moving forward, moving laterally. But definitely a guy that's got some traits, and he's got some nastiness to him as well, as we could see. So you come in here and you can catch some coach's eyes and hopefully make the practice squad. But I don't think he's a day one, week one guy that's going to make the roster. At least in my opinion, he's not.
Well, he'll be fun to watch in preseason at least.
Especially if he uses that paint on his face for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've already got people in the chat saying if he uses orange or something, that'd be really cool. The next guy is Miller Moss, the quarterback from Louisville. Spent time at USC prior to coming to Louisville, so he is a prior backup of Caleb Williams already. And I heard the joke already that Miller Moss is going to do what he did best in college and come back up Caleb Williams. They beat Kentucky pretty bad last year. That's the only thing I know about Louisville. That's the only time I really watch them, unless they're playing. Well, I guess I saw them against Miami and stuff, but I don't know, just a camp arm, or what are your thoughts on Miller Moss?
He's just a rookie mini camp arm, and a guy's going to come in. Who was that guy that they had in camp last year? He was on a practice. I don't know if he's still there or not. The quarterback,
Austin Reed. He went to UFL. I don't know if they'll bring him back or how.
Yeah, if he's gone, then I could see Miller Moss taking that spot there. But yeah, he's there. The Bears are not even looking at. He has no chance of making the roster. That's for sure.
Yeah, Austin Reed actually was tearing it up in the UFL. He was like breaking records and stuff. The next guy on there, we got a corner.
Yeah, he's a guy that really hasn't played much. Was at Albany, transferred to Tulane in spring of 2025. Was a backup, appeared in 7 games. Not much. More of just a guy with some traits. That's all.
Now they brought in some kicker competition for our guy Cairo Santos, Gabriel Placencia from San Diego State. Touche put him up on Sunday morning, and I think I was looking at the long. That's the first thing I looked at, because the only thing I love Cairo, other than he can't kick the ball more than 55 yards, and Gabriel's long in college was 53, but they said at his pro day he was booming them from 60, but who knows? San Diego and trying to kick in Chicago is 2 different places.
Right.
I don't know. It's a kicker, right? Anything on him? I'm assuming nothing.
I got nothing on kickers. I don't do special teams.
What about the running back out of Kennesaw State, Coleman Bennett?
Yeah, Coleman Bennett is an intriguing kid. He's a guy that doesn't have much in terms of like tread on the tires. Started his career at Bucknell for a couple of seasons. Was it in 2023? Was a team captain and a first team All Patriot return specialist. You put on his tape. Last year he was at Kennesaw State. Put on his tape and only had 157 attempts, 764 yards, average almost 5 yards a carry with 4 touchdowns. Had 27 receptions, 314 yards, and 3 touchdowns, receiving touchdowns. So he's a guy that's got some wiggle. He's a guy that has got some wiggle in his game in terms of, especially amongst the crowd there. I love his vision. Shows tremendous vision in terms of, especially if you're doing a wide zone. He sees that he's that great peripheral vision. He can see that back cut developing, can plant and hit up field. This is a guy that intrigues me a little bit. Also, like I said, has a solid pass catching ability as well. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. Not obviously that third running back position. I think right now Britton Brown is probably the lead candidate to take over that position. But Coleman Bennett can come in here and obviously a lot's going to depend on special teams, what he can do on special teams. But he's got some intrigue to him. Like I said, not much in terms of mileage on the treads there, but definitely a guy that gives you some wiggle and some surprising wiggle. Now, the long speed ran a 4.68 40, so it doesn't have that breakaway speed with a 1.61 10-yard split. But he shows an ability to kind of get around that edge, especially when he the vision. Like I said, I love he can bounce in and out of holes. You can also see something like that's kind of clogged up in the middle and just bounce it out to the outside and get around that edge there, defender, and get around the corner. So put on his tape, wasn't expecting to see much, but actually was quite intrigued by what I saw. So definitely a guy to keep an eye on, I would say, in training camp and see how he does. But I think him and Britton Brown, and I right now I don't know if they have any other running backs on the roster, to be honest with you. But I think those two guys could be battling out for that third position in terms of the depth chart. But if not, then for sure practice squad ability.
Maybe Xavier Thomas, according to KB, is possible. The next guy, Skylar Thomas, the safety out of Oregon State. We got a tight end. I'm going to run through these because
none of these guys really caught my eye, to be honest with you. So you can just go right through them if you want.
The tight end out of Iowa, Hayden Large. I was going to ask you about him because tight ends out of Iowa
he's more of a fullback than a tight end. Yeah,
all
so
right.
He's more like a tweener, kind of like H-back. And it doesn't get much in terms of catches or receptions or anything like that. So
we have Jaden Loving, the defensive lineman out of Wake Forest that we covered already. Squirrel White, the wide receiver from Florida State. I remember seeing him at Tennessee. Smaller guy, gadget guy. I didn't see much out of him from there. Bo Gardner, a long snapper out of Georgia. I believe our long snapper.
He's got a chance. He won the Pat Manley thing. There's like I think there's a camp or something like that where I think Pat Manley, the former ex-Bear long snapper, holds, and he won that. He won that competition wherever. I don't know what the details are, but he was like the top long snapper at that camp, and so he's got a chance because I think the Bears do not have a long snapper currently signed to the roster.
I was trying to remember if he was a free agent or what. The long snapper from last year, but
so I think currently they don't have a veteran long snapper, so he's got a chance to make it as a long snapper. So keep an eye on Bo Gardner there, long snapper from Georgia. Obviously playing at Georgia, SEC big game, so he's done some big snaps during his career. So, the fact that I'm sure Pat Manley's probably have that as a puts in a good war for him is there as well. So I'll be curious to see how that turns out. But he's got a chance to make the roster, I think.
And then we got Omari Kelly, the wide receiver from Michigan State. I thought I saw something about him earlier, but I meant to look up his dimensions or something, and I just
haven't had a chance to look at those. I actually he wasn't on him and
Mason Murphy were recent.
They were not on my initial list of unsigned or UDFA. So I haven't looked at Amari Kelly or Mason Murphy yet.
Yeah. Well, D Stern say, what if Squirrel regains his speed? He's not going to beat out Xavier Thomas there. I don't know. We'll go around the rest of our division first with the Packers, who Didn't have a first-round pick. In the second round, they picked Brandon Cisse, who we covered when we were covering defensive backs. Then they followed that up with Chris McClellan, who we've talked a lot about, and then denied Ennis Sutton after him. Then Jagger Burton from Kentucky, the center. And then it says Jackson. I can't remember who. I think it's a safety.
Domani Jackson he's a corner from Alabama.
That's it, yeah. And then Smack, the kicker out of Florida, which Packers fans are fired up to have a new kicker after Brandon McManus. Of course, they're blaming a lot of their losses on him. But the biggest thing here is that their attacks at the defensive line were guys that we liked, both of us. Right. I know you were a huge McClellan fan, and denied Ennis Sutton. I wasn't a huge fan, but once we got to that part in the draft, I was like, are we going to grab this guy to bring in some depth?
No, he's a solid player. Denai Denson's a solid player. He's a guy that was consistent for Penn State, 3-year starter. Like the last couple of years, he's got 8.5 sacks the last couple of years. So that's 17 sacks total for last 2 years. And they got over 25 tackles for loss. So he's a guy that's he's not bendy or twitchy in terms of off the edge. So I'm curious to see what the Packers do. I believe obviously they have Jonathan Gannon there. So they're going to do a lot of that upfield attacking type of defensive front. Right. Obviously with Michael Parsons there, all that stuff. So he's a guy that's got some of that terrific, great, straight lines kind of quickness and get off and speed, not twitchy or bendy around the edge. So, but he had the dimensions in terms of what Dennis Allen likes in terms of his defensive end. So I thought maybe he would be intrigued. Something that the Bears would be intrigued in. So obviously they pass there. And then for me again, Chris McClellan is a guy that I'm going to keep a close eye on because the only pick that I had a question mark was could you have gone Chris McClellan over Sam Roush in that third round, because I thought the Packers took him after the Bears took Roush, and he's a guy that I'm going to keep an eye on here. But yeah, I'd feel a lot better if the Bears had McClellan in their draft class right now, but it's not, and we moved on. So we'll see how it develops here. But yeah, I mean, of all the other teams, and we'll get into other two teams there as well. Of all the divisional opponents, I think that the Packers had, even though they only had 6 picks and one of them was a kicker, I think they had a solid overall class. I think Brandon Cisse is a guy that I was kind of hot and cold on. Just a 1-year starter, South Carolina. I saw him get burned a lot by speed, but he's definitely a guy that's got some technique stuff he's got to work on. But he's got the size and he's got the speed, his foot quickness as well to be a good solid press corner or off man corner as well. So I think he's a guy that could be someone that could develop some there for Green Bay. But yeah, obviously the first 3 picks, I think guys that can contribute for them next year. In terms of Burton, he's like, I don't know, in terms of center, if they need a center. I can't think off the top of my head if they have a center, if they need a center. I think Sean Ryan.
One thing, I am sick and tired of Kentucky Wildcats going up there to Green Bay and joining their team, and I'm not allowed to cheer for them anymore. Jagger Burton is a local kid straight from Lexington. Went to UK, not great, but good. He can snap the ball if that's what you want. He's athletic, but he can be susceptible to the bull rush, at least from what I saw while he was at Kentucky. But I'm just tired of our rivals getting my Kentucky Wildcats, and now I can't cheer for them. And usually they go up there and they play really well. They're there for a long time. Randall Cobb. Now they've got Valentine. Now they've got Jagger Burton, and I'm tired of it, Danny. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, so but I don't think he's going to challenge for a starting position next year. So I'm going to be more of like a backup or a depth guy. So we'll see how it goes there. But yeah, I think the first 3 guys can contribute next year on defense, and obviously they got some depth pieces there in terms of the other ones. And the kicker, may or may not be their kicker going into the season. Who knows? But
they should have a kicker competition like we had with Cody Parkey. The next draft class of our division rivals is the Minnesota Vikings that grabbed Caleb Banks at 18. Thank you. That allowed Thieneman to drop to us. Jake Golday, the linebacker from Cincy. Dominic Orange, Big Citrus, the defensive tackle. Caleb Tierman from Northwestern. Jacoby Thomas, a safety. Max Fuller, a fullback. Charles Dennings, a corner. Damond Claiborne, the running back out of Wake Forest. And then they finished it up with Gearhart, a center. Hopefully Caleb Banks, the foot thing, that's you called him the biggest boomer bust prospect in this draft. And
yeah, and that's how I see this class. I see if Caleb Banks is the boom, then this is going to be a pretty good draft class, because that guy's got potential in the middle to be a dominant kind of force. But big guys with bad feet, they tend to scare me, and that's why I was worried about him going up there. So, but yeah, I mean, I didn't want the Bears to touch him or Peter Woods in the first round, and luckily they didn't. So, but yeah, in terms of the overall Vikings draft, it doesn't really. I mean, honestly, the guy that really excites me, if I'm a Minnesota fan, would be Demon Claiborne, the running back, the type guy in the 6th round. This guy, he's got 4.37 speed, good change of pace back, can catch a ball out of the backfield. So I mean, that's the guy that really caught my eye. I know Charles Demings is a guy that he's got some good, in terms of athletic ability. He's a guy that at the Senior Bowl kind of stuck out there as well, but he's more of a developmental player. Max Bretson is like a fullback, which, if they're bringing back the fullback there in Minnesota, we'll see. Jacoby Thomas is a guy I looked at potentially for Bears as a late round safety prospect. He's a guy that's very athletic, can make plays on the wall, aggressive downhill, but also in terms of coverage, I don't think that's his best aspect there. And Caleb Tiernan, obviously, was a left tackle here with the Minnesota with Northwestern, and they're going to kick him inside a guard there with the Vikings. And obviously, Dominic Orange is a kid, 2 down, run stopper kind of guy. I know a lot of people were kind of for the Bears, asking this guy don't have 1 sack in his entire career at Iowa State. He's not a pass rusher. If people have problems with Caden McDonald, who has more of an upside in terms of potentially being a pass rusher, this kid here is just a 2 down run stopper. And obviously they lost. They being Minnesota lost both Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, so they had some full holes to fill there on the defensive line, and I think Banks and Orange can do that. And for me, Galladay is a guy that got a lot of love during the draft process. Big, tall, athletic linebacker, but I saw some stiffness in terms of his lower half that kind of questioned his ability in coverage. So obviously they run that 3-4 scheme up there, so he's going to be more that inside, linebacker, but kind of like a plugger. So I think that'll work well for them there. I'm not sure how it will work in other systems, other schemes, but I think it's Caleb Banks. If he's a stud defensive tackle, if he can stay healthy, I think they have a chance to be, a pretty good draft class, and the other guys kind of fill their needs right in terms of their defensive scheme. But nothing really stuck out to me here in terms of, oh my God, like the Vikings had a great draft. So it's more of like okay, all right, draft. But like again, for me, the Packers probably of the other division foes probably had the more impactful and probably better draft overall.
And then we'll round it out with the Detroit Lions, who take Blake Miller in the 1st round, followed up with a couple of Wolverines and Derek Moore and Jimmy Rolder. Then they grabbed Keith Abney as he continued to fall for no reason. Then they grabbed Kendrick Law, another Kentucky Wildcat, Skylar Gill Howard, the tackle out of Texas Tech, and then Tyree West out of Tennessee. I liked Jimmy Rolder, but I liked him as like a 6th or 7th round pick. I was shocked that he went that early. Yeah. And the other linebacker I liked went to Atlanta, I believe, in the 4th round. The Kendall Daniels, who I told you about out of Oklahoma. But the big thing here is Blake Miller is projected as a right tackle. So I'm hearing, at least rumor, that Penei Sewell may be moved to the left side and they'll roll with Blake Miller on the right side.
Yeah. So that's the thing is, Blake Miller was the because at that point the top left tackle, at least for me, was Proctor, and he was gone. Miami took him at 13, I believe it was 12 or 13, and then Freeling was there. So they had Monroe Freeling from Georgia, who's another pure left tackle, but they decided to go ahead and probably their best situation was kick Penei Sewell to left tackle and plug in Blake Miller, who's had, I think, like handful, like I think 2 or 5 starts at left tackle, and he's got over 50 starts at right tackle. So he's a right tackle. So I think you start Miller as a plug and play right tackle from day one, and I think you put Penei Sewell left tackle. And now Sewell, if I remember correctly, I think he did play left tackle at Oregon when coming out of college, and then because they had Decker there, so they moved him over to right tackle, and he's been an All Pro there. So kicking him to left tackle could it'll be an adjustment, but I don't think he won't be a fish out of water there for Sewell. Derek Moore is a good physical pass rusher. He's a guy,
Yeah.
again, there was a question about him in terms of tweener size. He's between 255 to 260. Some teams like the Bears, for example, don't know what to do with him in terms of, is he a ground guy? I assume he's probably going to be, because they run a 4-3 up there unless they change schemes over the I don't think they did. So I think he's going to be a hand and ground guy for them as well. But he's a physical, pass rusher. So obviously, rushing opposite of Hutchinson.
Right.
So it's intriguing. I think Miller's going to be a day one starter for them. Moore could be a contributor for week one. Rolder is a guy. Again, I think he's more of a depth piece for them. Abney's a guy that dropped a lot. I think he's a guy that I saw maybe second, third round. They got him in the fourth round, so I think that's actually fifth round. I think that's good value for them with Abney there. And Kendrick Law, we kind of touched on him when we were talking about in terms of some of these dynamic playmakers, and he's a guy that talk about could be I heard some teams use him as a think of him as like a running back,
Right.
some see a developmental receiver. I wasn't as high on him as some other scouts were. So, and then Skylar Gil Howard, obviously next to, Lee Hunter there at Texas Tech, kind of overshadowed there. And tell you the rest, I did not have a chance to scout. So I'm not sure about that young man from Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't know much about him either. Well, that is around our division.
Yeah, so I think overall, I think the Bears are going to get. I got two starters. Eventually, if Logan Jones is not a starter next year, he's going to give you a starter very soon. So I think they got two starters, potentially three starters. I think the Packers got potentially three starters as well there. So I think Detroit got two starters, maybe more. So that's the thing is it's like I think every team did well in their drafts, but nothing really kind of stuck out in terms of Detroit potentially could be. If Derek Moore, kicks it up and becomes, but right now he's just a straight up power rusher, right? How's that going to translate to the next level in NFL? Blake Miller will be a day one starter at right tackle, and we'll see how some of the other guys, if they can pan out. But I think, the Bears got two guys that are going to start, the rest of them are all going to contribute. I do expect, looking at the Bears, draft class, I do expect all of them to make the roster and be a contributor, early on, or if not early on, at least in the rookie season. So I think they're going to get good value out of the rookie class there as well. So same thing with Detroit, and same thing with Green Bay, and Minnesota. Again, it's all kind of hedges on what Caleb Banks does. If he's the defensive tackle that a lot of people had thought of, he was going to be potentially coming into the season. They could have themselves a pretty solid player there as well. So
right.
I think no one I don't believe in grades. Okay, so a lot of people are putting grades on these draft classes. I don't believe in that. You wait about 2 or 3 years before you kind of give an actual determination in terms of how a draft class does. But I think in terms of impact from these rookie class, I think all four of them did well, and I think all four teams plucked one or two starters at the minimum from this draft class. So, but nothing really kind of got me all concerned or oh my god, this team had a great draft and again, most of these teams were picking in the later half of the first round and so on and so forth. So they're not up there in that top 10 or anything like that. So obviously there is no big sizzle with that. But I think it all kind of depends here in terms of moving forward. How the Bears do in terms of some of the young guys, right? Some of these offense and defense, right? How do Rome Odunze and Luther Burden take the next step? How does Colson take the next step? How does Caleb take the next step, right? Do they continue to kind of fortify that run game, and does a new offensive line combination inside with either whether it's Garrett Bradbury or Logan Jones, how do they gel inside? And obviously the big question on left tackle, how do you protect whether it's Braxton Jones or if it's Jedrick Wills or Theo Benedict? How do you protect that left tackle and make them solid there as well? So B- grade, yeah. I mean, I agree with the comment there with B- with Mike. So I think B- is a good grade for the Bears. I think pretty much around the division as well. I mean, I only think Minnesota I might give them a C+ or something like that, but I think it's probably B or B- across the board in terms of the division. I think the Bears are right there with them. So you're going to see a lot of I think a lot of these guys kind of come in and contribute, next year, and hopefully now the biggest thing right now for me, at least question mark, and I think same thing with you, AC, and some of the people in our chat is what happens in the interior and the defensive line. How do they help fortify the defensive tackle position? So I know they talked about some of the guys, younger guys stepping up. Gervon Dexter, we've talked about so many times. Obviously, Gray Jarrett coming off of that, 2 years now removed from that ACL injury. Is he going to be, the Gray Jarrett we've known before? Is he a guy that's going to have to be, obviously, he's a veteran, right? Is he going to be on the snap count? That's the big concern for me right now is that interior, that defensive line. can they stop the run? Because if they can stop the run, get teams in third and long, second and long, I think they can generate pressure off the edge, either by scheming it or the development of Austin Booker and obviously Montez Sweat.
Absolutely. Well, I think that pretty much closes it out for us, man.
Another season.
I do want to say before we get out of here, shout out to Tally Brand for the hats. Again, we went over it. I love the GSH on the side. I love the font. I love the feel. The shirt is in the mail on its way here, but it looked great on the website. And I've seen it on X too, so I know kind of what it's going to look like when it gets here. The Crown of Chi-Town, TALLEYBRAND.com. Go on there and get you hats, shirts, hoodies, flags, all that stuff. He's putting out stickers with his orders currently. I'm not sure how long he's running that, but he's got some really cool stickers, and they're doing some really good stuff out there at Tally Brand. That guy just, he blew up overnight. It feels like. I don't know how long he's been working at this, but once we got him, I started seeing it everywhere, from podcasters to just Bears fans in general, buying all the stuff, and it's a great brand, and it's good. It's a good product. That I just had to give them their final shout out there for the season finale of Draft on Tap, Danny. And
first season together. Thank you for you for jumping in and being a host with me this season, and we'll see what the future holds for us and moving forward here at Barroom. But I definitely would like to come back and do this again next year. And thanks to all the listeners and everyone in chat and participating. And we got some knowledgeable fans out there that know what they're talking about. And J2K and Joe Vizzo and a bunch of other guys. And I remiss there's a bunch of guys I probably forgot their names, but everyone out there in the chat that's week in and week out that participate. Thank you for for being there and giving us the questions and being there to listen to us and all that stuff. But yeah, it was another great year in terms of covering the draft. We got a little late start, right? So there was a little bit of a like a rush to get everything order and get everything started up, because obviously the Bears went deep in the playoffs this year, which is a good thing, right? We want that to kind of continue. So
hopefully next year our season will start even later.
If we start in February, I'm okay with that as well. So right after the parade, I'll be able to come in and talk about top 10 lists and all that stuff. But I know, all joking aside, it was a great year. Had a lot of fun, and again, I appreciate you, AC, for jumping on and doing a great job in terms of running the board and running the show. Again, thanks to all our listeners and all our participants. And I'm going on vacation, guys, so I will be off for a couple of months maybe here, and we'll see what happens in terms of when the season starts. So, but the schedule comes up next month, and we'll start making those plans in terms of road games and all that stuff. So. It was another great year. It's exciting, and hopefully the Bears have another great year coming up here.
Yeah, it's my first year on Draft on Tap. I've always been a draft nerd, so this was kind of right up my alley to go down this road. And I had a fantastic time with you and with the Barflies. What I love about our Barflies is they're not just meatball fans. A lot of them are really smart. They do their research. They're not just popping on here with memories of 85. They follow the game, and they know what they're looking at and what they're looking for, and they're not scared to let their opinion known. I'll tell you that. But I had a great time, and I can't wait until next year. But until next year, like, comment, subscribe to the Barroom Radio Network and to Shimon Draft Scout on YouTube. Hit the notification bell to tell you when we go live. I don't know how long you're going to take off before you start putting out scouting stuff for next year's draft class. I'm sure it'll be a while, but I may or may not.
I'm already looking at the defensive tackle position. We're looking at some of the edge position for next year, some of the guys that potentially could be available. So running back, I think, will be a position next year that they could look at too as well. So we'll see.
That's a good class for it. They got some good ones coming out. But until next year, Danny, we'll just leave everybody with a bear down.
See you guys.